Hello, and welcome to the show called No Particular Reason. I am your host, Yanko, and this is my wonderful co host, on the other side, Kerri Lewis.
What's poppin', everybody?
And we're up to episode 54, which is very exciting. And we're chatting before the show, and we realized that we've been doing this for a long time now that we're up to episode 54. Can you imagine that?
It's, as I say, that I stole from my daughter's cuckoo banana pants.
I love that. The cuckoo banana pan.
You know what's so cool is I love it more now than I did when we first started, and I loved it then. So I'm just excited to see wherever the conversation takes us.
I know. Anything you feel inspired to bring out and talk about?
Yeah, so I was in my studies this morning, and something that struck me, there's two things. One, the jailer is held prisoner along with its prisoner. And why that came up for me is I think so often we refuse to forgive, assuming that in doing so we're harming somebody else, but really we're hurting ourselves.
Hmm.
So that's something that's really profound for me, and hoping to impress upon people is forgiveness is a choice, but it is the most powerful choice you can make in experiencing freedom and release of suffering. It's really all we can do, as that's as close to source energy, which it's still an illusion because we're perfection, but it's the closest illusion to connection with source that you can get.
That's right. It's funny how that works. And sometimes I get that kind of realizations too when I read through like books, other thoughts of other people thinking of the same things or having kind of a like aha moment, which
Yeah. And
yeah.
well, it's just, for the work that I do, I'm really passionate about aiding people in breaking free from suffering. And whether it's breaking free from habitual behavior that isn't supportive to their overall well being, or whether it's breaking free from a belief system. But I fundamentally believe that we suffer when we condemn ourselves or others. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we do that. But if you have an adverse reaction to somebody else, to their experience in this world, to how they view life, then there's some part of you that needs to examine your internal dialogue and choose to forgive either yourself or them, because you're trapped in something that you can be free from.
That's right. And I tell that to people when they ask me, well, what's the proper way to meditate or well, what's the whole point of it? And the point of it is to observe your thoughts,
Yeah.
to get to see repeating patterns, to see things that don't serve you, not to react in a way, but just to allow it to happen, just kind of like seeing it, seeing the thoughts coming up and not reacting to it, not analyzing it, and after a certain time you kind of get an idea of like I'm getting this thought because I've watched this crime show or whatever, or I get this thought because I've been thinking about this too much, or something else, um, or limiting beliefs thought they come out the same way. You'll get the thought and you'll be like, well, wait a minute, that's not true. Why am I even thinking that way? That's like limiting. I can do so much better than this or whatever. Why stop there?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, and it interestingly goes to my second point, to what I want to bring up today, and it's around a situation that is so beautiful. So earlier this week, I was in a 2-day academy for suicide prevention. It was uh, hosted by the state of Connecticut's Department of Mental Health, and there were all of these educators from UConn and these people who were really pressed on statistics and sharing numbers. And the whole academy was god awful. And what I mean by that is we have these people who are passionate. All of them are awesome. Like there's no diss on the individual, but all these people who are working toward helping support people break free from suffering, break free from suicidal ideation and suffering, but they're operating from the old habits and structures that cause people to suffer in the first place. So they had this event for 8 hours knowing, because research is so prevalent at this point, that people's mind attention span cannot sit for 8 hours like that. There were then their solution to that was to give fidget toys, like these things to play with instead of whatever. And so I was talking to somebody I care about yesterday, and I shared with them my experience around this education. And they said, well, I set up a meeting with the facilitators of this academy to ask them why it is they think that they can affect change doing the same, like, operating in the same uh behaviors that cause people to struggle in the first place, right? And this individual was like, well, that's pretty naive to think that you can change an entire structure. And knowing the power of my thoughts, I said, I don't think I can. I know I can. And that's truly questioning your beliefs and recognizing. And last night during the show, the Bright Side Chronicles, Alexander and Nana and I were talking about this. It's only ever been a few people to change. Societal ideology have made massive impacts on our society. It's only a few people, but it's those few people who believe. It's those few people who fundamentally um question their beliefs and challenge them. And then once you challenge them and you release them, you then have the power to take on other beliefs. And when you believe it, guess what? Law of attraction, baby. We are magnets. We attract the very thing that we believe that we can do in our mind. So that's why I encourage people all the time. First off, you got to forgive, because if you're in condemnation of yourself or others, that is automatically a lower energetic place to be in. Just naturally, as energy beings, you're naturally in a lower energy, which means guess what you're attracting? Other people in low energy. So it's just something you're going to have to accept, and it's a process. To Yanko's point, you were saying, you examine your thought and you make a different choice. I'm going to tell you right now, I've experienced a great deal of traumatic situations in my life. So it may have taken me 400 times to examine the situation and forgive that person and make that choice over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and then learning to forgive myself for it to finally release. But the thing is, I never gave up choosing to forgive, and eventually it didn't hold power over me. The same holds true as beliefs, right? I believed I was a piece of crap. Like, I literally, guys, thought I was worthless. I was a mistake, that I shouldn't exist. So it took me a few years of examining that belief and stacking evidence to the contrary, feeding my brain opposite information. And eventually I knew it was like it no longer held any power over me.
Well, and if you're more on the scientific side of things, people explain that with habits. If you keep doing the same thing, that turns it into a habit. Those neurons are fusing together,
Yep.
creating shorter paths, and every time you just take that shorter path. And you can observe that with animals in nature. They don't go through the bush, they go through the already existing paths around. They're not making new paths to go around because that's less resistance. So and to Kerry's point, is not something that's going to happen overnight or it's going to be easy, because imagine that you've been doing that for who knows how many years, reinforcing those beliefs, and then all of a sudden you hear me or a Kerry or somebody else talk about it, and you say, oh, I'm going to give this a go, and you try once or twice and you give up and you say, ah, that's not working,
Yep.
because you already exist in those beliefs. So
Yeah.
might take a while
Yeah.
until you see the effects going back. And same goes with observing the thoughts. When you start observing your thoughts, it might look like a crazy cuckoo banana house or whatever way you you are phrasing that. But after a while, if you're not putting energy on those, they just kind of gonna go away, and there will be a moment where there'll just be quiet. There will be nothing, and first time that happens, it's kind of scary too, because you're used to all that noise, and all of a sudden it's quiet, and it's different, and it's scary, like in a way, like anything else. If it's different, it's like, oh my god, what's going on? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
But
And then you immediately start thinking again because you realize it's quiet and you're like, oh crap,
yeah,
it's quiet.
yeah.
And then the whole like it's like,
Yeah,
oh
I gotta
damn,
fill.
I
I gotta
got it.
fill this
And
up
now
with
I'm like,
crap. Yes.
but I
Yeah.
will say, something you bring up that I remember, and I'm so glad that I love to journal. Not that I really go back and read my journals now anymore, but I did at one point. And I hated meditating when I first started. It was god awful. Like I couldn't sit for 30 seconds, not even 15. That's why I tell people, even if you sit for 10 seconds today and 15 tomorrow, because I felt like I was crawling out of my skin because you're not aware that you're operating from all of like it's just like this army of incessant barrage of thoughts, and so then you stop and observe them, and they're, for me anyway, they were not kind thoughts. So I'm like, this is like horrible. But by the grace of spirit, creation, whatever, I was compelled to continue to go back, and that was eventually what allowed me to recognize that my thoughts were just thoughts. They had no power over me unless I gave them power. And
That's right.
then I had the opportunity to experience something different.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring something, but I lost it. I had something related to it, and it just went away. Just like the thoughts, they come and go. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. It's permanent. But yeah, I remember now what I was gonna say. This is why people don't like to be with themselves, because they have no love for themselves, and the thoughts and everything that's going on inside drives them nuts. And most people look for company all the time. If you're alone and say family's away or something, then 15, 20 minutes or maybe an hour later, you're going to be thinking of who you're going to call or connect with friends or something else, because you're you're not used to being with your own thoughts. You're not used to being with your own self, which is perfectly fine, because all this time that you've been living you've been concentrating on everything outside, and there was very little reflecting in what's going on inside. And so that's perfectly okay if you're at that spot to not feel okay with yourself. I reconnected with a friend a couple of days ago that was talking about one of those Vipassana retreats where you just go to be with yourself. You leave your phone, you leave everything away, and for 10 days, you're in a place where you have enough time to reflect and go within and just soak it all in and meditate, and your basic needs are met. You have food and shelter, and this is great. But for some people, it's hell,
Yeah.
because they're not used to, from being with company or being alone for an hour or two, of just like jumping in and being by themselves, with their own thoughts for days and ago.
It sounds like heaven to me. It's funny. I was watching um, the Aaron Rodgers documentary, who is a quarterback in the NFL, and he's seen as being completely out there because, he talks openly about using ayahuasca. He's very spiritual. And in the documentary, he was locked in a hut where it was pitch black, and he had access to a bathtub and something else for however many hours, like 24 to 48 hours. I'm like, I would be in bliss. Like, you give me a bathtub with hot water and ask Nana. Like, Nana knows how to make his girl happy. Find a bathtub for me, get me a candle, and I could stay there all day. That's why he could go to Comic-Cons for weekends. And I'm just like happy as a clam hanging out with myself. I
No,
love
but
it. But
this is the thing though. Once you get used to being with yourself and accepting yourself and loving yourself, instead of fighting with yourself and saying, "Oh, I got to change this and that," because then you're gonna realize a bunch of things about yourself that nobody cares, like how you look or how you present yourself. You're the only one who cares. Like really, nobody cares. Um, and when you come to this kind of conclusions and other things that come about when you observing yourself, then you stop trying to change things and fix things because they don't need fixing. They're just okay.
well, and that's the
And
thing, it's interesting because I listen to a lot of people say I don't do this, I never do this, and I do it too. Like I caught myself doing it yesterday, but we're such contradictions. We're constantly in like we just can't, and so I just accept
yin
that
yang.
I could be
Yeah.
hella joyful right now and ready to like tear somebody's face off in 2 hours. Am I actually going to take action and do that? No. But have I had thoughts that like I'm like raging out? Yeah, man. And I love the whole of me, so I refuse to allow myself to condemn me for being a human because we're having the experience. And so I just laugh. I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm doing this
I mean,
right.
yeah, that's the place where you want to be when you just not take it seriously and you laugh at yourself because that's you've done the best you can, and that's the best you can do at this given moment, and you're happy with the outcome and
Yeah.
whatever that is, or
Well, it's
just
so this morning,
laugh and
right?
enjoy.
What's that?
I said, and you just laugh and enjoy the moment.
Yeah. Well, so earlier today, I'm at Nana's house, and I typically shoot off a message to my daughters if I don't see them in the morning, always something. And it was later, and I didn't, and I immediately got this like notion, like this feeling of sadness, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's crazy. I don't have to feel sad. I can cultivate the fact that one, it's now 8 o'clock and I can send my kids love. Two, I can infuse myself with love and then I can send it. And it's just, I found it so interesting in my observation of my reaction to my thought that I was able to just immediately shift and be like, oh, cool. I'm going to send my kids love because I love them.
Yeah, when you go with that emotion, instead of modifying it, suppressing it, or going, "Oh, this is really bad. Am I a bad person or whatever?" Because of thinking that or whatever. Because like you're not making your thoughts; they're just coming up, and
Yep.
then same goes with feelings. So if you connect with that feeling, um, it's weird. It's a weird state to be in because the feeling kind of loses its power and it shifts because you're paying attention to it, instead
Well,
of
you're
whatever
honoring it.
else you've been
Too.
doing. Yeah, instead of whatever you've been doing until then, you're like, okay, you're there, let me see where you're about. Like you're coming up, okay, so all right, let's see what are you about, you know.
Well, and so I was talking to this incredible person yesterday who had a health crisis, and that health crisis, changed the way they experience life, right? And there was so much judgment of self for not being able to show up as the person or with the abilities that they had prior to this unexpected health thing. And I said, your suffering's coming from this judgment that you need to be anything but what you are in this moment. Like,
That's right.
and when you accept that, here's the beautiful thing. You also learn and tap into so many different superpowers you didn't know you had when you were focused on what you knew you did prior to whatever's going on. And so it really is just honoring your feelings, right? Obviously, I was talking to another person, an amazing gentleman. He's going to be on any of our shows. He can be here too. His name is Al Richards, and he's a passionate speaker on the topic of addiction recovery. Super fit guy, great energy, and he just got his leg amputated. And we were talking about the fact that, yeah, he gets to feel angry about that, but you can't live in that emotion. So you honor the emotion. You don't dismiss it and judge it or judge yourself for feeling it. You honor it, and then honoring it, you release it so that you can experience what's going on in this present moment more fully and not attached to how you think things should be.
Matter of fact, you don't even have to do anything. It just happens naturally. Like you just sit on that space and everything unfolds.
Yeah. Well, just
You
not
don't
resisting the
yeah,
feeling
you don't
and
yeah,
honoring it.
you
Yeah.
allow it to happen. You don't have to do anything. It's the opposite when you're trying to do something that you're suppressing it because you have a certain expectation of the outcome of how something should present itself
Yeah.
versus of just let's see where this goes. Let's just sit with that and see where this goes. You know, in when you sit in that space and you're sitting in that emotion, good or bad or whatever, with no judging or perceiving, you're just perceiving it as is, then magical things happen and you don't have to do anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird.
Well, it's so interesting. And just for everybody, I'm going to go off camera for a minute because I'm at my beautiful Nana's house and his computer is dying on me. So I need to move upstairs to get his plug. But I don't know what I was going to say. So you talk, and then I'm sure, knowing Kerri, I'll have something to say shortly.
Well, usually, and this is something that it's been happening, and I've been observing that to many people. I don't know if many are aware of like how the Schumann resonance or the vibration of the Earth is changing right now, because of one reason or another. There is also solar flares and other things that are affecting the frequencies around, and those things also affect us as individuals because we're also, believe it or not, vibrational beings. We vibrate and we carry certain frequencies. So the point I want to make is that now you're going to make or you're going to have more experiences where you be in the middle of talking about something and you just forget where you were going with that, kind of like losing your line of thought. And I see that happens to me a lot. I see that just happen to Kerri. I see that happen to many other people, and this isn't something to worry about because if you don't take life seriously, um, that information that you're about to say or that you were thinking about, it'll come right back. It might not be instantly, but it'll come because kind of like the thoughts that keep circling around. So I wanted to bring this up because you just get one of those moments.
Stop spreading the news.
Oh, the news! I'm spreading the news. No, and I wanna bring this out to our audience. We're not bringing news. We're just being ourselves. We're not psychotherapists or doctors or like, you know, we're trying to uplift you, get you in a different space, or give you a different perspective of like how you look at the world. So we're
Well,
we're not
here's
news
the thing.
agency.
Yanko can say all that, and that is true, but lived experience is much more valued to me than a piece of paper that says that I learned a bunch of shit in books. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is where I get hot and bothered and very passionate. Again, looking and sitting amongst these highly educated professionals this past week who were beautiful, like no diss, they're all doing work in service to humanity. However, a book filled with information and actual application so that it becomes wisdom is very different. And where I take issue personally, and this is a personal perspective, I cannot speak for Yanko, is that we have a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of papers and a whole bunch of letters in front of and behind their name, and they cannot actually say what it's like to experience peace, what it's like to overcome addiction, what it's like to be able to observe your thoughts, what it's like to show up fully expressed, unapologetic. They operate from their own set of conditions because they've never given themselves permission to question them and then do something different. And so, yes, I am not at all educated in higher ed. In fact, I passionately am proud of not having any certificates because I'm not a slave to policies or specific things that I have to adhere to in order to show up in service to the individual that is in front of me and or the people I'm talking to. And at the end of the day, look, I can catch heat, and I shared this with the individual yesterday who said that it was a lofty goal for me to think I can change the structure of how the Connecticut Department of Mental Health does their trainings. But I said to this individual, I've caught heat my whole life. I think about Kendrick Lamar. Like, I've dealt with confrontation my whole life. I'm not going to back down from confrontation. My job is to stay in what feels right for me. It's not to make you wrong, but it's also not to back down from what I think or know to work for myself and could potentially serve another person who's sitting and suffering. You
Yeah,
got me fired up, Yanko.
I tend to do that around people. I don't know how I do that without even like maybe I'll throw one word up there and they'll get fired up. Last time I got fired up about something, it was a good thing that I got to see it and I was like, "Oh, I'm seeing this coming up." So, yeah, I know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Um
But
but
I just think that, there's a lot of people who have a lot of street cred, so to speak. And what I mean is lived experience, who play small because they feel like they don't have anything to offer because they don't have this illusionary degree. Now, do I take into account these people went out and chased something they were passionate about, they are highly educated and skilled? Yeah, of course, I have immense respect and appreciation for anybody who chases what feels right for them. I really do. It's no diss on them, but that doesn't negate the fact that um a person who's lived on the street shooting heroin for 16 years, who was able to question their own thoughts and shift their beliefs, has just as much, if not more, influence to help somebody else move the needle and heal from suffering.
yeah. Well, there's very many applications, not applications, but explanations why people are the way they are, and everyone have their own experience, and I honor everyone's experience because, like, the way I look at it, it's like one big party. Everyone comes in here to have what they want to have. Some people want to have fame, other people want to have money, other people want to have knowledge or certificates and other things like that, and that's the driving force behind, because that's the beauty of it, because you have something that drives you to get up in the morning and to keep going.
Yeah.
and And so to me, um, everyone does what they feel right to do, and that's why I say everyone it's full, whole, and complete in my eyes. Like, you know,
Well, I also think that it also I think the reality is we need people at all different levels of awareness, right? With the educators, we need the streets, we need all levels of consciousness, because all levels of consciousness will help raise up another person. So like if I had read Eckhart Tolle 30 years ago, I would have like there was would have been nothing that made any type of sense to me, because I wasn't aware enough within my own consciousness to be able to resonate with his work. Fast forward, because of many people who actually got degrees and therapy and all these things who guided me along the way, I continued to do the work and shift it out and up into different consciousnesses where I could experience more that knowing, that peace, that our own, like our superpower is currently in this present moment, and that's really all we have.
mm, that's right. But again, you're not wrong about the different consciousness levels, because you that gives you the ability to have different perspectives.
Yep.
Because when you're in the one level, I'll tell you, like books that I was reading, I hardly understood anything, and I just kind of pedaled through the books just to kind of like see if I can find something that I'll understand, like a hidden gem or something. And then a couple years later, I'll reread the book and I'll get inspired to go back and check a passage or something that came to mind, and I'll be like, "Oh man, this makes perfect sense now." Like maybe because it wasn't all processed in the deeper level in the mind when I was reading it, or not, or I didn't have the perspective that I have now. But that's usually how it is, and that's why I say, like, I'm not 100%. Nobody it's 100%.
Oh, it's
I
it's
come with my experience, and if my perspective changes, I'll say, hey, listen, 2 years ago I was thinking that way. Now I'm thinking this way, because like my perspective changed. Like now there's a different level of consciousness. I won't say higher or lower. It's just different. So, and that gives me another way to see it. It gives me the balance in between. It gives me the distance, or like whatever way you want to say it, the background and the foreground, and
yeah.
all that, to be able
Well,
to
it's
process it.
interesting you say that. I was working with an individual last week and I knew they were not present. I was taking them through meditation and I knew like there was part of them, there was a lot of resistance, but I purposefully kept going through the meditation. And then another individual who witnessed this individual was like, they're not even doing it, da da da. So I was like, let me jump on a call with you. And I jumped on a call with this individual and I said, it doesn't matter. I'm planting seeds regardless. It doesn't have to make sense at all. That's why I think, I can wholeheartedly say I have no attachment to the outcome that my clients get when they work with me, because I know I show up fully present and in love. So there's nothing I can do that's harmful because it's in pure love. And this is why my clients also know that if I cannot show up outside of love, I will cancel the meeting. If like I'm struggling with ego or in my feels and I can't ground myself into love, because I truly believe when you're in love, you're in this collective consciousness and I can reflect back to that person what they need to hear from themselves. It just comes out of me, right? I won't work with them. But I know that. So if I know that, I trust fully that even if on the surface it doesn't look like I served them, I know I did. I know I did. And that's where I am. People ask what is the your desired outcome? I'm like, to show up in love. Like, because if I do that, I will hands down be able to serve in a meaningful way, instead of I have some type of agenda and understanding that it makes me know what you need. That's total banana pants. And that's
Yeah,
why,
you're projecting, then you're
yeah,
projecting your beliefs into their system, and that what happens with everyone every day when you see somebody on the street or school or bus or whatever, they're projecting their beliefs onto you, and that goes with anything,
yeah.
and you may experience it, though. You may ask them, like, why would you think that way, and they'd be like, I don't know. Or they'd be like, well, I heard the story, or somebody told me, like, you know
Yeah, and I
you
never
might lose
I
your
won't.
money if you invest the money in the stock market or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well,
Without
that's why I going back to you not understanding the books and me being able to know that I'm working with somebody who's has resistance or is not bought into maybe the process we're going through in that moment. I don't have
right.
an expectation that they are, because I understand that they are getting what they need from me, even if it doesn't, if they can't logically put that into understanding at this time and space. You know what I mean?
And I'll bring this up from the point of view of hypnosis, because we only use about 20% of like verbal communication. Everything else, it's body language, the way you look somebody, like your presentation or whatever. And if we take it to even a higher level of understanding, then it'll be auric fields, like one person magnetic field, affecting the other person that sits with them, and affects their magnetic field. And so that's why sometimes people feel kind of nice when they're in crowds, because if the energy is high of the crowd, they feel the energy of the crowd, they feel about it. So it doesn't have to make sense, um, logically, because a lot of the things are happening in the deeper level in the subconscious mind,
Yep.
and there is something happening. You don't have to know what it's happening or understand it. You're just there. You're there to facilitate, to just hold space.
Yep.
That's all I can say.
That's why Reiki, like, there's just that's the thing, is there's so many healing modalities. There really just is, because if we're limitless, if we come from a creation that far escapes our capacity to comprehend, then why
Mhm.
is it we have to comprehend how we're healing? And I had this conversation with two individuals this past week, and we think that our job is to fix the problem, the suffering, the whatever that's coming up. And it's really not. It's just to be a witness to it and just ask. Like, for me, I'm just like, okay, I'm letting this go to whatever's out there to handle, and I don't overthink it or try to figure it out or whatever. And every time I do that, things work out perfectly. The minute I try to figure out or problem solve a problem using my logic, 99.9% of the time I miss the mark, or it feels really, really hard. I get it done, but I it's not seamless. It feels really difficult.
Yeah, like you're swimming against the current.
Yep. Exactly.
And yeah, but it's all a definition. Like, we're using definitions to make sense of the world around us.
Yep.
We have definitions for different diseases, and we call it, this or that or something else. But then we don't even have a definition of what it means to be healthy. Like, is there a definition? Can somebody told you this is the definition to be healthy? I mean, we can define other things, but it's just words that we use in our vocabulary to make sense of what's happening around and how we perceive the world.
Well,
So
and
in
that,
reality, I won't say that somebody is sick or somebody is not sick or somebody is healthy, or everyone is what they are in what they get. And I'm going to bring some comments. We have some of the viewers that are commenting in. We appreciate you guys watching us, commenting, and getting in.
yes,
And
Lima. Okay, can I put you on blast? So Lima showed up in, hands down, the best costume this past Saturday. Oh, I loved it. And to your point, um Yeah, emotional intelligence is critical in learning who you are, and then really understanding your power, because then like your emotions get help you observe your thoughts, right? And shift out of the experiences that you feel no longer serve you. So,
Well, they're two different things. Emotion always overrides logic. That's the first thing everyone has to understand. When you're in your emotion and something that's unfolding, there's no logic. This
thank
is
you.
ingrained in our DNA. You know, back in the day, tiger jumps in the front of you. You don't use the logic. You don't say, should I run or should I do? You
Yep.
just turn and run.
Yep. And
all
I
the logic gets out of the head. You climb up a tree or you jump or you do something and then you go back and you analyze and you say, well, how did this happen?
and well, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of clients, and in relationship with people, I'll have one client say, "Oh, my boyfriend said this when we were fighting, blah blah blah, and now he says he doesn't remember." And I'm like, "That's probably true." Because when you're in a heightened emotional state, you're thinking from emotion, you're not thinking about logic, which is why I really encourage people to learn and practice self-care strategies, breath work, tapping, grounding, journaling, listening to music, boxing. I don't It's a myriad, smelling a candle, right? There's endless possibilities to take care of yourself. But the minute you are aware that your emotions are coming up, if you think you're going to achieve a desired result in an emotional state, you're sadly mistaken, because you're not operating from your prefrontal cortex. And so how you respond is typically, right, from a fight or flight, fear based like understanding. And that's why I encourage my clients all the time. The minute you start to feel some type of way, make a pact, make a commitment. Up, this conversation's over. I'm gonna step, and you can do that 100 times. There are times me and my daughters are really good. Mom, this conversation's over. Okay. And then we come back to it when where emotions are not heightened, and we can have a logical conversation where we can hear each other um without being in fear, because really that's I fundamentally believe.
Yeah, get that emotional balance.
Yeah.
um yeah, and I see something else though, because like, to go back to the example I was giving, back in the day, if you see a tiger, you run, um, uh, or you freeze or you fight. It's fly, fight, freeze. One of those three. But nowadays, there's this invisible tiger that's like, you not making it on time, you're not like paying your bills, and there's something, and your system gets overloaded constantly because back in the day you would turn around and run from the tiger, and after it's gone, you kind of settle down and the system goes back to balance. But
This is
now,
a really big tiger, guys. Because
yeah,
I'm going to tell you right now, I have no alerts on my phone. When I was a leader in corporate America, I would have my emails alert me. I would have text messages alert me. I would have Facebook alert me. I would have all this stuff, right? And so what I learned was my nervous system was constantly in overdrive. It never ever got to become like be static, like in homeostasis, calm, right? And this is why when people experience road rage or they commit a heinous crime like in an instant, people are like, well, where'd that come from? I'm like, it's not that surprising, because this person is always in this really highly reactive state, and then it just takes that one thing to
to
tip
trigger
them
the next, yeah.
over and send them right into making a choice that most likely will have long lasting repercussions. And it's really because we are not taught to be proactive, particularly in America. We are taught to be reactive, right? Even think about it. Like this training I went to around suicide prevention, yeah, sure. They talk about upstream, which means preventing it, but it's really like reacting to somebody having suicidal and ideation stuff. And I encourage people, be proactive. Practice breath work for 30 seconds every morning. It's going to become monotonous. It's called
Yeah.
mastering the monotony. You're not going to want to do, but you do that every day. And the minute somebody cuts you off or threatens your daughter, before you go to, you practice breath work so much that you remember to breathe, and then you make a different choice. And that's really where our superpower lies, is making those choices. Me, it was taking off my alerts. I don't get alerts. Obviously, my morning and nighttime practices have helped me establish that. But then there's so many other tools that I lean into throughout the day to regulate my nervous system so that I can stay grounded and present and responsive from a place of love rather than fear, which is when we're in that heightened state, it's a place of fear.
Yeah, I like how you get it all together. It's perfect. Breath work, it's a wonderful tool, and I see it more and more. And people that are, it's becoming more and more a thing nowadays. Let's put it that way. I see a lot of events where um, they do breath work, they do seminars, they do different things because that really helps you get those out and to put the system back into symbiosis, or kind of like a natural way of being instead of being up and up. Sadly, the reality of thing is that once you do it and you don't realize, you're gonna feel the relief, but then you're gonna go right back because you already had that, habit or system of like how you pay your bills, how you show up, and what you do. And it's like any other modality. You can go get like a some kind of result, but do look into your patterns, your thoughts, your emotions, see how they affect your day to day, so that you can start in a road where you're actually making a change that'll help you down the road, not
Yes,
something
which will be
temporary.
long lasting. You're right.
Right.
Like self-care is great. Don't get me wrong. But until I reprogram my brain and rewired it to know that I'm limitless to, and here's the thing. Yanko, I know you can attest. Alexander and Nana yesterday on our show was talking about this too. We've had so many experiences now. Like there's so much evidence that proves to us, right? That we don't have to, like we don't have that like fear of oh my god, this isn't going to work. However, at one point in time I had to have blind faith. I had to believe that I was going to examine this belief and I was going to shift to a different belief, and eventually that would change the way I experienced life. Eventually the universe provided me with the evidence I needed. But that's why, it's super important to surround yourself with people who are working to elevate themselves rather than keeping you where you're at because you're in a cage if you do. So even if it feels foreign, even if there's resistance, if you keep doing it, eventually you'll experience your own results. Yanko and I are very passionate about the fact that I don't want to sell you on anything. Don't take my word for it. Please don't. That's
Yeah.
crap.
Do
That's
the do, do,
propaganda.
do the work. Try
Yeah,
it for
do the
yourself.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, get that experience. Try it out. See what works. Obviously for Kerri, breathwork works. For me, more of a sitting in silence works. In other people do sound baths. Other people do salt baths, caves, or whatever. Whatever works for you. Try it out. See what works.
And so here's the thing. Again, when we talk about being proactive, and I'm a big fan of practicing what I preach. So I want people to see this. This is my alarms. They're not set. So as you can see, I don't have any alerts. This is hundreds of positive messages that I put in my phone over time So that way, if I was experiencing a moment of struggle, a limiting belief, something that I knew I had to think about that, guys, I'm still scrolling. That's called being proactive. It's taking a couple minutes and figuring out, okay, what's something that can help me stay regulated? For me, I'm a big visual person. And the reason why is if we know that when I'm emotional, I'm not going to think logically, guess what? I'm not going to remember to breathe. So breath work is great, but if I'm already pissed off, I'm not going to be like, oh, breathe. But if I have a sign that's tattooed on my arm, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to breathe. And then I remember to breathe. And so it's taking time to set yourself up for success. And we are scientists, right, guys? We are our own scientists. And that's why I tell my clients, I don't have this roadmap or one size fits all program. I have so much knowledge that we plug and play. Let's try this for a while. See how that feels for you. Let's try this. And ultimately, you learn yourself so well that you establish what feels right for you, and then you know how to show up in service to you. And when you do that, man, you're so powerful. You can't not be a positive beacon for other people to follow.
That's right. Yeah. Great. I'm going to bring some more comments. There you go. We missed the line with what was this going with, but we appreciate the love.
We do appreciate the love. Thank you
In
so much for
we
checking us
do
out.
it.
And I did see Cito placed a comment earlier, and there's if I'm not mistaken, Cito is a boxer who I have so much not boxer. I think he does UFC, but I've seen him get in the cage and put himself out there and show up and do things. And so shout out to you. And in terms of your comment, Lima, it's just a moment by moment choice. And to Yanko's point, right? We are products of habits, behaviors, and societal conditioning from in utero till now, but until
Mhm.
you start to examine it. And if you believe in right reincarnation even before that, but just say from baby to now. Um, so it takes time, and it's just this willingness to give yourself grace, meaning you're gonna be a hot mess express, and then you're gonna feel some, you're going to have some experiences, and you're going to be a hot mess express, and then just over time, if you don't give up and you stay committed to curiosity, non-judgment of yourself, and kindness towards yourself, you can easily free yourself from anything that keeps you stuck in fear and suffering.
Yeah, and fear can actually disappear altogether. All gone. Um,
I haven't got there
when
yet.
when you become like really fearless, I think if you start going on to like what creates fear, for most people it's the lack of control, because if
Yeah,
you
which
don't
is
control what's happening, then you're afraid of the outcome. And so the more you get in alignment of like an acceptance of that, yeah, this is happening and this is how I'm perceiving it, whatever, then there's no fear. um,
Yeah. Well, I think most people fear death, but the reality is like it. Don't get me wrong. I was steeped in fear around death for a long time, but I mean, everything dies. Like, think about it. This show's gonna end, and then I'm gonna do something different, and then that's gonna end, and you know what I mean. And so, I'll tell you what I did. I went into meditation and I died. Like, I died, and then I went and I'm like, oh, so it'd be cool. And and then I was like, well, I mean, if that and that and judgment, my thing is I was so afraid of what other people thought of me, and the minute I learned to let that go, I was free because it didn't matter anymore. You could think I'm hokey. You can think that, I mean, my family will tell you I'm the crazy twin. And that's okay because I don't, if I make sense to you, then I'm not honoring me, because I'm performing to make you understand me, and that's ridiculous. And that's why I love the Lima pulled up as an Oompa Loompa, and I'm like, yes, I don't know this man from a hole in the wall, shows up at a party, fully expressed, and I'm like, yes, I will bow to you, you know? And so it's just doing what feels right for you and knowing that that is your superpower. Don't worry about what other people think about you, because 90% of the time they're worried about what you thinking about them. So
That's right. Everyone play their character, and why be somebody else? Everybody else is already taken. Just
it's
be
so
yourself.
true.
You're the only one who's very unique to be here for a purpose,
Yeah.
to show yourself and express yourself. You know. But yeah.
Ah, nah, you know what? You're listening to yourself. You know, I will tell you, Lima, Yanko will, we only mirror back to people what is already within themselves. It's like we're all mirrors for each other. Yanko's in my mirror may be polished a little bit more, which means we cleaned off some of that dust, that BS belief system and bullshit that we've been stuck in. But you are just as amazing and powerful as me and Yanko and every other individual in this whole world. And I hope you never forget that, because that's real truth right there.
And one day you're gonna realize that you and me are the same, and everything is one.
I love you. I feel, do you know what I just got? I just got a picture of, do you remember Elf? I know you remember Elf because you made a TikTok clip.
I know.
I just got a picture of you as Elf, like, look into my eyes.
No, sometimes I do that to people when I go to show because it's supposed to be fun.
And
I'm
it has to be,
showcasing
it has to be
hypnosis.
fun.
I'm showing people different things, and sometimes when I see them, there's this fear of people because media portrays hypnosis as something like a mind control, or are you gonna make me bark like a dog, or do
Woof, woof.
something else? And
Yanko,
yeah,
how
and they'll
dare
just
you?
kind of turn around. Some people are kind of like,
Yeah, very
you're not going to do something to me, right? You have moral standards. And I go, sure, I have. Look into my eye. And they just turn around and run.
That's wild, Yanko. I don't even know what to say. On that, our 54th, almost a year episode is winding down. Oh my God, in 2 weeks, we got to do something wildly cuckoo for the year. I might show up in Nana's cosplay outfit. Who knows? I don't know.
Oh, okay. I
Whatever
gotta
he
tell
finds
you,
to do.
like I follow you guys in social media, and the costumes were just amazing. Everything was just like, I was like, man, this looks like the place to be. Like, because
We
everyone
have a
is
lot
having
of
so
fun.
much fun. Everyone in themselves. There is no like, oh, you weird, you're not weird. Everyone is perfectly fine. Everyone is having fun.
Well, that's
And
the thing, is when you stop having this expectation of how you need to be, then you
Mhm.
stop having this expectation around how others need to be. And it's interesting because I'll leave the community with this, right? Yesterday I was on the phone with a gentleman from South Africa who transitioned. So he is a part of the transgender community, and he's very fearful around American ideology and all this. And I could tell he was getting very upset. And I said, here's the thing. I fundamentally believe if I stay in love, I accept myself, I accept everybody. I don't care if you paint yourself purple, dress up in pony stuff, marry a horse, like whatever makes you happy and you're not hurting somebody else. Like, and so it's giving yourself permission to not have expectations of yourself other than kindness and compassion, curiosity and love. And in that you can hold space for anybody else and not have an expectation of who they need to be in order for you to connect with them.
Right. We're all connected, anyways.
But
I
you
mean,
know what
there's
I mean.
there's different. Well, we're just like doing the show. Like you come
Yeah.
in, you play a character. you act whatever way you want to act based on whatever you feel like or whatever. So yeah, the reality of things is that everything it's connected. You're not a separate being.
Yep.
You're separating yourself to have the experience. In how much you want to go back to oneness, it's up to you. Yeah.
All right. Until next week, guys. Thank you so much for the comments and the love. We love it. If you liked it, please like it, share it, give us any feedback. Nana. So Yanko and I are happy to respond to any feedback, whether you really resonated with this show or had an adverse response. That's okay too. We appreciate and respect
Yeah.
all people's understanding
We love you. We love you all. We really appreciate you vibing with us. We invite you to do it more often. We really enjoying chatting with people, not only chatting in between ourselves. If we can bring out something to you, let us know. We appreciate the feedback. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. All right. Bye bye.
Okay, Grace.
And have a wonderful weekend.